we're late again. Once again. I don't know, like 40 episodes in, surely you guys know that I'm terrible at time management. It's not either of our best qualities, but I think it's probably worse for me, though. Yeah. I think I'm worse about it. I don't know if it's I guess it's probably my ADHD a little bit, but, you know, we can blame Bear, because he had to have a birthday on Tuesday. Yeah. I mean, granted, I could have done this early, knowing
that he was going to have a birthday on Tuesday when we normally record.
Yeah, but I didn't. And so, now here we are.
I know, I was thinking that we should really start recording more than a day before we publish.
Not even a day. More than 2 hours before we publish.
But you know what I mean. I know. I was thinking that maybe we should record on the weekends or something.
Oh, we definitely should. But do you think that we can get I don't know what we want to call it, my executive dysfunction or whatever, procrastination, to do something that isn't at the very last minute? Yeah. So, I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to have a story this week, but it takes me weeks to come up with a story and research, and you stole my story last week. So, I was not prepared for a story this week.
Sucks to suck, I guess.
I guess.
Well, anything exciting going on?
No, I can't even think of a good headline to talk about.
I don't know. I mean,
there's been a lot of headlines.
So many headlines.
But, like, the Amish lady that drowned her son to, like, give him to God.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, and, like, her husband also drowned, like, swimming across the lake or something in the same kind of test of, whatever craziness. And, not that religion is crazy, but, like, what they were doing was crazy.
Yeah, the thought of what they were doing was not maybe well planned out.
No. I don't know, because you took this in a headline direction, and I was, like, taking it in, like, a personal life direction.
Well, I don't have anything going on in my personal life, ever. I mean, if you have something going on in your life, please share. But I never have anything going on in my life. I have a jaw ache that hasn't stopped in weeks.
Well, we both barfed our guts up last
did.
week. Or this week, last week. Mine last week, yours this week, so there was that.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody wants to know about that.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's good for everybody to know. Bear and I saw UFOs.
Mm-hmm. I did not.
No. But speaking about the UFOs, so I kind of just did a Goog, and I was like, so here's what we saw. We were kind of looking to the south and up, obviously, and there were these two bright lights that were, like, bigger and brighter than stars, and they were kind of leapfrogging over each other, kind of like the ones that you and I saw in Roswell.
Right.
They were kind of going up and to the left, so diagonally.
Mm.
And so it didn't look like a plane, because planes don't do that. And so then, a few minutes later, we saw the same lights, but this time it had to have been, like, miles and miles and miles west of that.
Right.
And it was just, like, a couple of minutes since the first ones that we saw, because the first ones we saw, I saw only at the very end, and they were blinking out whenever I saw them. But then whenever I saw the other ones, I saw them actually doing the thing, and then they blinked out.
Right.
And again, they're bigger and brighter than stars, and they were kind of, like, orange. So I did a Goog, and I was like, leapfrogging, orange lights, sky, whatever.
Right.
And I saw this Reddit post, and they were talking about, oh, well, that must have been Chinese lanterns. Because I don't know if that's just the area of wherever these people that were asking about them originally, like on this post, had been. And I was like, well, obviously they weren't Chinese lanterns here, because it was like the middle of September in rural New Mexico.
Right.
So, and also, I don't think Chinese lanterns would have been that many miles apart. And then doing, like, this weird, like, same leapfrogging thing.
Right.
And so, I don't know. If anybody out there knows anything about UFOs or identified flying objects even.
Right.
Or just to tell me that I'm an idiot, please reach out.
Yeah.
twistedandmysterious@gmail.podcast@gmail.com.
One day you'll learn.
I won't
What
at
our
all.
email address
But
is.
anyway, please reach out and tell me what I saw. All right. Well, I guess, do you want to hop in?
I guess we don't really have anything exciting going on. Plus, we live together, which makes it really hard to have
I know.
anything that we haven't heard.
We really should stop living together.
We really should.
I think it would be better fodder for the podcast.
But in this economy, who can afford to not live together?
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so we're getting back in the time machine again. And we're rolling back to the 1960s.
Ooh.
In Cape Cod.
Ooh.
Or the Cape. If you're in the know.
Yes.
Which I am not in the know.
No, we're just going to call it Cape Cod.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're as dumb as me, but before this story, I never really considered what Cape Cod was.
Oh?
I mean, I don't know if I just always thought that it was like a town. Like,
Yeah.
Cape Cod is just a town. But it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
I mean, I assumed it's a cape.
I don't know what a cape is. Is a cape a thing?
Yeah.
Oh. What's a cape? Is it a peninsula?
It's some
Because this
sort
is a
of,
peninsula.
Yeah, it's some sort of like oceany thing.
Yeah, so you know the part of Massachusetts that like kind of curls up like a like an elf shoe?
Yeah.
Apparently that's Cape Cod.
Yeah.
That whole thing. So I'm an idiot.
It's a cape.
Okay.
And a cape is
I mean, I guess I should have known that a cape was a
land
thing
formation.
because there's other places called cape things, and I guess I just never really thought about it.
No, it's just a cape.
Well, anyway, so I think I always consider Cape Cod a town.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the town's on the Cape. Provincetown is like the tippy tip of the curl.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about that a lot. And then a town called Truro, which is like right before you get to Provincetown. So we're like all the way to like the end of the Cape in this story. So out by the ocean.
Okay.
All right. So it's February 8th. Oh, real quick. Because I was told that we don't do enough trigger warnings.
Okay.
Yeah, so my understanding of true crime podcasts was that you're going to hear some gnarly things.
I mean,
if
you should
listen
expect to
true
hear gnarly
crime.
things. But I mean, we also say that our podcast isn't just true crime.
That's true. So you're going to hear some gnarly things today. So there is murder. And there is some reference to rape and necrophilia. And there will be some graphic descriptions of things that were done to people. And so if that's not your cup of tea,
then join us on another episode.
Join us next time. All right, so anyway, it's February 8th, 1969. And a search party headed out into the woods behind the Pine Grove Cemetery in Truro, Massachusetts, looking for two missing Rhode Island women named Patricia Walsh and Mary Ann Wysocki. Hazel's adding some ambiance.
The cat is playing the piano.
All right, Farron's gonna go get her because she's already ruined the mood.
Turned it off because it wasn't even on.
She's all, what are you talking about? I did not do that.
There's no such thing.
Okay, well, let's take it back. So, search party is looking for Rhode Island women Patricia Walsh and Mary Ann Wysocki. The search consisted of park rangers, firemen, members of the Truro Rescue Squad, and state and local police. It was headed up by Chief Harold Berrio from the Truro Police Department, and fun fact, the Provincetown Police Chief, Cheney Marshall, was quoted as saying, "That guy's as useless as a tit on a bull."
All right.
So, Chief Berrio
speaks very highly of him.
Right. Well, he wasn't used to his town garnering all this attention. He was definitely relishing in the photo ops of this search. So, Massachusetts State Trooper Tom Gunnery was also present at the search. About 20 minutes in, they noticed some ground off the path that looked recently disturbed. Gunnery, along with some other detectives, went to investigate, and Gunnery noticed some green cloth sticking out of the dirt. He started pulling on it, and out came a U.S. Army duffel bag with what looked like blood on the hook of the strap.
Okay.
When he finally got the bag out all the way, a stinky stink came with it. And the smell...
I love a stinky stink.
Yeah, the smell wasn't coming from the bag, though. So Gunnery got down on his hands and knees, and he started digging in the dirt below the bag with his hands. And he got down about a foot when he felt something hard, and when he pulled it out, it was a human hand. So they stopped the search. They called Lieutenant George Killen and Detective Bernie Flynn with the state police, and Dr. Daniel Hybert, the county's 9,000-year-old medical examiner.
Yes.
When they arrived at the scene, Gunnery started digging again and pulled out the rest of the arm, part of a leg, another arm, pelvis and hip joints that had been separated from the torso at the belly button, skinless buttocks, and then a head in a plastic bag reading Horizon Electric Blanket. The head belonged to a woman whose expression was frozen in one of terror and pain.
Yikes.
She had been badly beaten. Her nose and cheekbones were basically flattened with the force of the beating.
Oh my goodness.
Her 4 upper teeth were missing. Under the head was a torso in an industrial white cotton laundry bag like a motel would use. And this is gross, so I'm sorry. The torso had large sections of skin peeled back and, quote, cut away in a sweater-like pattern.
Delightful.
Her breasts were still attached, but were missing the nipples. And at the very bottom of this really horrifying hole was a blood-soaked pair of pink panties with the word Thursday embroidered on them.
Okay.
Now, this is a pretty rough start for a story, right?
Yeah.
But it gets worse, because this was neither Marianne nor Patricia.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And this is the story of the Cape Cod Vampire.
Okay.
A.K.A. Tony Chop Chop Costa. Earlier in the summer, I had gone to the library, and, you know, they have that table that has, like, the themed books or whatever, and so they had a true crime theme. And I picked up this book right here.
Yeah.
It's by Liza Rodman and Jennifer Jordan, and it's called The Babysitter, My Summers with a Serial Killer. And I was like, tell me more. So that's where most of my information is going to come from, but I did some other googs. And I guess I just need to break down and create a website for us so we can put our references on it. I don't know.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
My references are very shoddy.
It's fine, but yeah, anyway. But I'll just add that to the list of the other 7,000 things I need to do. All right. Well, anyway, Tony Costa was born Antone Charles Costa on August something that I erased, 1944.
Okay. Sometime in August of 1944.
Yeah. He was born to Antone and Cecilia Costa in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I hate the word Massachusetts.
So Chop Chop is not his Christian name.
No.
Not his government name.
No.
Okay.
I mean...
he earned that name.
I mean, like, it sounds like it would be.
I was convinced it was.
Yeah. But it's not.
No.
Yeah, that's not the name his mom gave him.
Okay.
So Antone...
I mean, maybe it's the name his mom gave him after he...
Perhaps. But she didn't.
Okay.
Antone, which is, like, a crazy name. I keep wanting it, like, Anthony or something. I know that it's a name, but I don't know. And Cecilia had actually been married for 15 years, but had been unable to have a baby in all of that time. By the time Cecilia became pregnant with Tony, World War II was going on, and Antone Sr. was sent to the war as a U.S. Navy Reserve carpenter's mate. When Tony was just 8 months old, and before Antone ever saw his son, he died while rescuing another soldier. I guess a guy was drowning, and he, like, went to help him, and he saved him, but in the meantime, bonked his head, and he drowned.
Dang it.
I know. So he died like a hero's death.
But an unfortunate trade-off.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Well, Cecilia, because, I mean, this is 1944, and times are tough, and, you know, women didn't have a lot of rights anyway. Right. And so she quickly became pregnant again, just 5 months after her husband's death. This man that she was with was named Joseph Bonaviri. He owned a masonry business, and they got married. And Cecilia and Tony moved to Somerville, where Joseph's business was. The new baby was named Vincent, and he was just 22 months younger than Tony. So not quite, well, I guess that's older than Irish twins, because Irish twins are born in the same year, right? And these are like just a little less than 2 years apart. Tony always kind of resented his stepfather and brother, like one of those like, oh, you stole my mom from me or whatever kind of thing. Or maybe even just that, like, why did you get married so fast after my dad died? Or, you know, and he never knew his dad. He treasured the belongings of his father that were sent back to them by the Navy. And I don't want to say that he was obsessed, because, I mean, he's just a little boy wanting to hear about his dad. But he asked questions about his dad all the time. And Cecilia was forthcoming with him and told him as much as he wanted to know. And when he was 7, he told Cecilia a man had been coming into his room at night and talking to him, and when he saw a picture of his dad, he claimed that was him.
Yeah.
But, you know, this isn't a ghost story. So it could be that Tony made it up because he just wanted to know his dad. Maybe he was actually being visited by a ghost, or, you know, maybe some creep was just coming into his room at night.
But we don't care. The ghost part of the story is completely irrelevant.
That's right. So, no ghosts here. One strange tidbit about little Tony, and I don't know how old he was when this happened, but you know how in the old days people collected like coupons or stamps or things to trade in for like prizes or whatever? Like there's that episode of the Brady Bunch where the kids all collect the stamps from like the local department store or something. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
And then like the boys and the girls were fighting over what they should, because they tried to pool their stamps and buy something, and they were all fighting over what they should get. I guess you could get these kinds of things out of the backs of comic books, too.
Okay.
And you could trade them in for, like, x-ray glasses or, you know, yo-yos or whatever.
Well, sweet decoder ring.
Yeah. Well, Tony saved his, but not for a sweet decoder ring.
Dang it.
He got a taxidermy kit.
It's what every child needs.
To me, like, it's beyond bizarre that at any time in history a child could trade in comic book stamps for a taxidermy kit.
It's a wild world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wild world now in a very different way, but it was a wild world.
I mean, they didn't have video games. I don't know. Tony, anyway, was way into this. But the problem was that there's only so much roadkill a kid can collect to taxidermy. Yeah. And people's cats started going missing.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. A local kid from Provincetown who would hang around Tony and Vinny in the summer said that he never saw a finished trophy, though. Yeah. So, aside from this creepy hobby, Tony was a smart kid. He made good grades. He was even so bright that his stepfather, Joseph, put Tony in charge of his masonry business's finances when he was just 11 years old.
Wow.
Can you imagine Bear?
Right?
Being in charge of our finances.
I mean, I can imagine that he would think that he could be in charge of our finances.
Yeah, no.
He gets some big ideas.
He sure does.
But,
he had a whole bunch while I was trying to write this, and I was like, stop talking to me now.
But,
he's gonna sell some things at the farmer's market.
He's gonna 10 days.
What else is he gonna do? He's gonna modify some keyboards to sell.
Yeah, where's he gonna get the keyboards is what I wanted to know.
I asked him.
Because he wants to save up to buy a PC.
Oh, so he's telling you all these things as well as me?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's telling them to me in my ear and he's texting them to you?
No, he came and told me.
Oh, he went and told you?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, well anyway. So, yeah,
he texted me, but then he came and told me in person.
Oh, I do remember him saying that he needed to go talk to you while he was supposed to be practicing his piano.
And he was like, I'm just going to tell you really quick because I've got to go practice my piano. But...
Okay.
And I'm just like, where is he going to get these keyboards from that he's supposed to be modifying and then supposedly selling? And
That's
then...
what I asked him. And I was like, and how are you going to modify them?
Why doesn't he just, do some chores and save up some allowance?
Because that would be too easy. Well, anyway, so Joseph called Tony the Whiz Kid.
Yeah.
Which sounds very, 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, so not everything was fun in accounting and taxidermying.
Mm-hmm.
The summer before Tony turned 12, he was in Provincetown for the summer, and a local teenage boy tied him up in a basement and raped him.
Delightful.
Yeah. And it is possible that this wasn't his only attack. One of Tony's friends came forward and said that a local parish priest from the St. Peter the Apostle Catholic Church named Father Leo Duarte had also been sexually attacking young boys.
Fantastic.
I know. So, when Tony turned 16, his mother used some of his father's death benefits to buy him a car. And I thought it was good that she saved his benefits for stuff like this. Because, you know, like in a post-war economy, you would think people would be using everything they had just to make ends meet. But she did save it. She even has money saved for him for later that we talk about. It was a second-hand car. They called it a jalopy in the book. But Tony loved it and the freedom that it brought him. Mm-hmm. However, it would also kind of sort of led to his next little act of deviancy.
Oh boy.
He rented space in a neighbor's garage to store his car. This neighbor had a 13-year-old daughter named Donna, who had a crush on older, handsome, charming Tony. And Tony started taking little Donna down to the basement, tying her up and taking off her underwear to, quote, look at her.
Cool.
And he claims this was all he did. I mean, it's bad enough. That's not, like, all.
Right.
But, I mean, like, I guess looking at it from his perspective, this is all he did. But this is a little 13-year-old girl with a crush. And so instead of thinking this was some sort of attack, she gave Tony a key to come to her house after her parents were asleep. Mm-hmm. And in November 1961, he did just that. But Donna was asleep, and she woke up to Tony, like, looming over her, and she started screaming, and he ran out of the house. And a few days later, he, like, starts dragging her down to the basement again, and she starts screaming again, and so he slaps her across her face. And she runs home, and she tells her mom, Tony wouldn't let me go, and her mom went to the police, and he got arrested. Mm-hmm. And he claimed that he was just trying to talk to her, find out why she was mad at him.
Oh, okay.
That's all. That's how we do this. We drag people to the basement to do this. But the judge did not buy this. And Tony was convicted of assault and battery and breaking and entering with the intent to commit a felony. And the felony they assumed was going to be rape.
Yes.
He was sentenced to a 1-year suspended sentence and 3 years probation and was told to get out of Somerville for good. And I love that these judges are like, get out of here. Go commit your crime somewhere else. Yeah. Like, stop forcing deviance into other communities. Mm-hmm. So Cecilia sent Tony to live with family in Provincetown. A few months later, Cecilia divorced Joseph and she and Vinny moved to Provincetown as well. And this little tidbit cracked me up. So it was December 1961, and Tony was enrolled in Provincetown High School as a senior, and she's snuggling down on her thing. So Tony was enrolled at Provincetown High School as a senior, and Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet. Mm-hmm. And so no one at the school, including the principal, knew about Tony's past conviction.
Yes.
And so the note in Tony's file from the principal was, he seems to be a gentleman.
He seems all right.
Well, you know, he said sir and ma'am. So, you know.
Seems like a stand-up guy.
Right. He was also tall and handsome and charming, you know, all of the things that you want in a serial killer. The other kids also found him cool and kind of flocked around him, and this is something that kind of happens throughout his life, is younger kids kind of just hang around him. And he liked having followers, but he also considered himself to be smarter than everyone.
Right.
And that spring, Tony started, quote-unquote, dating a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Her name was Avis Johnson. Her mother tried to shut that down, especially after she found out about Tony's conviction back in Somerville, but Avis would not be deterred. Tony and Avis went to her mother to ask permission to get married.
Oh.
Because she's 13.
Mm-hmm.
And of course her mother was like, abso-freaking-lutely not.
Right.
So they did what any reasonable young couple in love would do. They got pregnant to force her mother's hand. And so, because it's, you know, the 60s, her mom was like, I guess I have to sign off on this marriage license now because you're pregnant. And so on April 20th, 1963, 19-year-old Tony married 14-year-old Avis.
Oh, boy.
Young love.
Mm-hmm.
Tony didn't handle being married very well. He didn't like the responsibility and the pressure of being married and having a baby.
So good that they went through all of this.
Absolutely. I was like, what was the point of that? Like, just, like, the to prove that you could? Like,
Yeah.
I just don't know. And Avis's vision of this, like, grown-up, happy life crumbled, like, in the first months of her marriage. Tony would leave and hang out on the beach all night or just, like, get drunk and cry on the couch. And Cecilia his mom had given Tony and Avis a wedding present of $2,450, which is about $26,000 in today's money. So a pretty good chunk of change.
Yeah.
Tony burned through it all in less than a year.
Good deal.
Plus, he couldn't hold down a job. And so they were always broke. And now they're broke and they've got a baby. And Tony's just terrible at being the head of the household.
Yeah. Being a human?
Yeah, right? The problem also is that when he found work, he was really good at his work. Mm-hmm. And so people would hire him because he could do plumbing and carpentry and, all of these things. But he was completely unreliable. And so because he also thought that he was smarter than everyone, he'd get into fights with the bosses. And so he never could keep a job.
Yeah.
And most times, rather than work and provide for his family, he either spent time at the beach or hanging out with, like, the local kids or at the pharmacy drinking tea and eating Lorna Doones.
All right.
I was like, that's a really weird, like, hobby, but okay. Because also, he's, like, 20 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, hanging out, drinking tea and eating Lorna Doones. Mm-hmm. Tony started going to see a doctor in Wellfleet, which is about 15 miles away. And it was because he was, like, talking to a friend, and the friend was like, well, this guy's treating me for my alcoholism. Mm. And Tony's like, well, I've got, like, this nervous stomach, and, like, my marriage is crumbling. Maybe this guy can help me.
Right.
But it's just far enough that nobody will know that I'm going to see a doctor. Mm-hmm. So he was seeing this guy named Dr. Sidney Callis, who was a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So when you're a doctor of osteopathic medicine, you're not an MD, but you receive a DO.
Okay.
I looked it up, and they're licensed to prescribe medicine and perform surgery and stuff like a regular doctor. And I'm probably going to make people mad because I'm probably completely saying this incorrectly. But, like, to me, it sounded like it's a cross between, like, traditional medicine and, like, homeopathic medicine. Mm-hmm. Because, and I just Googled it and let Google AI tell me, like, what it was. But it said that they believe that the mind, body, and spirit are all interconnected and that the body has the inherent capability of healing itself. And so they focus on understanding the root causes of problems and not solely the symptoms of the problem.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Either way, Dr. Callis was also interested in psychosomatic medicine with emotional illness, and he did a residency at Bridgewater State Hospital, which was like an insane asylum or an asylum for the criminally insane or something, which is probably a place we should cover sometime because it sounds rough. He diagnosed Tony as having a nervous disorder and gave him a prescription for something called Solacin that it was an anti-anxiety medication that had about 350 milligrams of a tranquilizer in it. Okay. This was, I guess, technically a safe tranquilizer if you didn't use it with drugs and alcohol, but so it's not safe for Tony.
Right.
He would also just give Tony samples of other drugs that he had.
Yeah. Sounds safe.
Right. So by 1965, Tony and Avis now have 2 babies. And Tony was seeing Dr. Callis regularly. I think I read that he saw him like 30 times in 2 years or something. So not just a once a month kind of a thing. He also started to really just demean Avis. And he would call her a slob and tell her, just be ugly to her, that she wasn't being a very good housekeeper. Like, she's a literal child raising 2 babies.
Right.
With a worthless husband who isn't bringing home any money, so she's also trying to feed 2 babies and take care of a house on $0, you know. He was drinking more, doing more drugs, spending more time away from the house. In May 1966, Tony met 2 girls named Bonnie Williams and Diane Federoff who wanted to go to California after running away from their homes in Florida. And Tony offered to take them, and honestly, Avis was probably relieved to be rid of him for a while.
Right.
However, less than a week after he left, he was back, and I wrote something down, and then I had to correct myself, because I wrote that no one ever saw Bonnie and Diane again, because I think that that's what a lot of people believe happened. They did get as far as eastern Arizona when Tony's car broke down. A police officer came along and gave him a jug of water to cool his car back down. However, if they got any farther than that, no one really knows what happened after that. His initial story to Avis was that he left them in Pennsylvania after a police officer told him he couldn't transport minors across state lines, and Diane was only 16. However, later he told the police that he had driven them to California and dropped them off with their friend in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think a lot of people thought that, like, they were probably some of his victims because he, like, why did you tell these different stories?
Right.
If you actually dropped them off in California.
Just did the thing.
And it does seem that later in life, they were found.
Why is the piano playing when the piano's off?
It might be on now again because she rocked over it.
Chaos ensues.
Forever and ever. But anyway, at the end of the babysitter book, it did go on to say that they had, like, been taken to California and that they lived separate lives. You know, like, one of them, I think, had been married and then died in, like, the early 2000s from diabetes, and the other one, like, had a harder kind of life, but that they both survived their encounter with Tony. So after he got back to Massachusetts, he moved out of the house with Avis, or moved out of his house with Avis. Avis did not go with him. He moved out.
He moved away from Avis.
From Avis, there we go. And he was working summers at the Royal Coachman, which was a motel in Provincetown. And his mother was the head housekeeper there. And he was doing odd jobs and handyman work for them. And this is kind of where that book I read came in, because Liza Rodman's mother would work there in the summers as a housekeeper. And her friends owned the motel. And so Liza and her little sister would just kind of bop around and follow Tony's mother around, helping fill, like, the maid cart.
Yeah.
And, but they would also regularly ride with Tony in the motel's work truck when he had to go to the dump or, like, you know, run errands in town or whatever. And he would buy them popsicles and, like, so they were alone with him a lot.
Yeah.
But nothing bad happened to them. And, I mean, she does talk at the very, very beginning that she has, like, this weird, like, recurring dream. And so she doesn't know if, like, maybe there's some kind of memory that she blocked about him. But by all accounts, like, there doesn't seem to be anything, like, he didn't do anything to them.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't hurt them in any way. So not long after Tony moved out, Avis asked him to move back in because she's a child. And after he moved back in, he started kind of just regularly raping her.
Good deal.
And also, not so fun fact, did you know that spousal rape didn't become a crime in all 50 states until 1993?
Yes.
Wow, that's like the other day, basically, in history. Like, especially for something that's, like, terrible. Well, after this, Avis had another baby, which is exactly what they needed. Tony was doing more drugs, and he had also started seeing Dr. Hybert. Remember him? The 9,000-year-old medical examiner?
Yes.
So he was also just the doctor in town. Apparently, Dr. Hybert was known around town as Dr. Feelgood.
Oh, good.
Because he started just supplying drugs to the large hippie population that was moving into the area.
Groovy.
He was even supplying drugs to John Waters.
Yeah.
Who was an up-and-coming avant-garde artist in the mid-60s.
Yes.
Tony started... his stupid mustache. Like, that's all I can see in my head. Tony started selling the extra drugs his doctors were just handing to him.
Right.
And so he became, like, one of Provincetown's first drug dealers. Then Avis kicked him out again. And this becomes kind of like a regular pattern with them. And sometimes he would even live with Avis after she started seeing other men. And he was seeing other women. And it wasn't even like a, like, coupling kind of thing. It was just, like, a place to crash kind of a thing. In the meantime, Tony had also planted a marijuana garden in the woods behind the cemetery in Truro. Remember that place?
Yeah.
He called it his garden. And he and his little teenage groupies would hang out there and do drugs. And, you know, the teenage groupies are like, this is cool.
This is awesome.
Yeah. Often when he'd take Liza and her sister with him on trips to the dump, he'd drive back there and check on his garden. He'd also hide his drug stash there. One story about this garden that was told in the babysitter book, it makes me think of the Babysitter's Club. I remember to say that. Was he took a girl named Marcia out to the garden one day, and he called her one of his kid chicks.
Ooh.
I know, because he's so groovy.
Yeah.
He claimed it was because the woods were creepy, and he didn't like to go alone.
So you should bring a child with you.
Yeah. That, you know, when I'm scared, I figure Bear's the best person to take with me. Yeah. So they were walking along a path, and she felt something hit her back, and she turned around and she saw an arrow on the ground. And he had carried a bow and arrow into the woods, you know, for protection, you know. And he claimed that he was trying to hit a tree, and it ricocheted off the tree and hit her. Luckily, I guess her jacket was thick enough that, like, it didn't puncture, or he's really terrible.
I was going to say, it sounds like he's really terrible at a bow and arrow.
Yeah, but it's probably lucky that she got out of there alive. So Tony tried to move to New York City to work for a freight company, but got fired after just 45 days. And then he and a friend decided to move to San Francisco in January 1968, because that's where all of the drugs and the hippies were.
Right.
So he had been living in an apartment in San Francisco for about 2 weeks when he met and moved in with a single mother named Barbara Spalding. She had a 2-year-old son named Bobby. Tony and Barbara were doing any and all drugs that they could get their hands on. In February, Tony found out that there was a warrant for his arrest in Provincetown for not paying child support.
Yes.
And the Avis had officially filed for divorce. And so Tony asked his brother to wire him money for a plane ticket to fly back to Massachusetts. He left his car for Barbara, and he left. And apparently she never touched the car because it was found, like, weeks later just covered in parking tickets where he had left it. I had also heard that she was never seen again, but that she was also found alive later. So,
yeah.
I guess she went on to have a daughter that she abused terribly, and then, I don't know, like, she died from doing too many drugs or whatever, but at the end of this book, it does say that she had also survived her encounter with Tony. So either way, he made his way back to the East Coast, and Tony started working as a snitch for the police because he had found out that Avis was dating this other drug dealer, and he wanted to get this guy busted. And so he told the police where he could find this guy's stash, or, like, where he could find a drug deal happening or whatever. But this didn't really work out for Tony, because then everybody was like, oh, well, Tony's a snitch. So then people didn't really want to hang out with them because, you know, he's a stool pigeon. Dr. Callis, Tony's old drug pusher, had also finally had enough of Tony and was refusing to see him anymore. And so Tony broke into his office and stole all of his drugs. And then he went to see Dr. Hybert, and Dr. Hybert had left the room or something, and he had his medical bag on the thing. So Tony stole that with drugs and medical equipment in it.
He really is just a stand-up guy.
He's the best. So then he started dating a waitress named Sydney Monson. And on May 24th, 1968, Sydney's sister saw her arguing with someone in a parked car, and then she never saw her again. When she filed the missing persons report on June 14th, she told the officers that she was sure the person in the car was Tony Costa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she waited 3 weeks because Sydney was known to do drugs, and she figured, well, you know, she just ran off with somebody or whatever to do drugs. Tony claimed that Sydney had up and run away to Europe because, quote, hippies are like that. Here today, somewhere else tomorrow.
Okay.
Which was kind of the problem with this story at this time, because there were lots of parents whose kids were going missing, but there were also a lot of kids that were just running away to live with Charles Manson or, you know, like things, other terrible, or going to San Francisco or, you know, just hitchhiking around the country.
It was a very different time, and kids were trying to break away from social norms.
Right, and so it was like, some people were like, well, I didn't report them missing because I just figured that they went off on an adventure
and joined a cult.
Or, you know, right? And so they, you know, just didn't know, like, is something bad happening to my child, or are they just living their best lives? I don't know. So in August, an 18-year-old runaway named Susan Perry, who had previously met Tony, asked if she could crash with him. The weekend of Labor Day, she left to go home to gather belongings from her father's house, and she was never seen alive again. When anyone would ask Tony about her, he'd claim that she took off to Mexico. You know
how hippies do.
Here today, gone tomorrow. So, in March 1969, Tony was arrested again for not paying his child support. And he spent 6 months in jail this time. He was released in the fall of 1969. And now, I think that maybe even before he went to San Francisco, he had been fixated on this woman named Christine Gallant, who was working in Provincetown for the summer at that pharmacy that he hung out at. And while Susan Perry had been living with them, he had been seeing Christine regularly. And while he was in jail, he was worried that Christine was going to move on. You know, he wasn't going to get to see her anymore. Well, when he got out of jail, he went straight to New York to see her because she had moved there. And they spent a couple of weekends together doing drugs. But Christine told a mutual friend that she was going to marry this other guy named Raul Mata. And that Tony was freaking her out because he was being, like, super, like, intense. And she was afraid that he was going to kill her. And she even called her boyfriend Raul in Florida because he was working there in the off season to tell him that she was afraid of Tony. And Raul took it seriously enough that he left for Florida straight away. But on November 23rd, before he got there, Tony arrived at Christine's apartment. And she was like, I'm just going to come clean with you. I'm going to get married to this other guy. You know, like, we can't see each other anymore. And no one really knows what happened after that. He left the apartment. He went to somebody else's house in New York to get drugs. And they asked about Christine. And he told them that she was sick. And then he went back to Massachusetts. When Christine's roommate went back to the apartment, she found Christine dead in the bathtub. The tub was half filled. She was kneeling face down. She had a bruise on her shoulder and 3 cigarette burns on her chest. And her cause of death was ruled asphyxiation due to drowning. And the medical examiner also ruled her death a possible suicide due to the large amounts of barbiturates that were found in her stomach and her brain. And Tony started claiming that Christine was suicidal at the thought of living without him.
Yeah, that's why she told you that she was going to marry somebody else.
Right. And I was just like, big old eye roll, dude. They did kind of question, because the medical examiner said that he didn't really, like, question the reason for the bruise or the cigarette burns. And, you know, other investigators were like, you know, she was in a really weird position to have died by suicide, because like, that would have been very uncomfortable, the way that she was found, like, the position she was in, because most people, they'll take a bunch of drugs and go to sleep, or, you know, or lay down in the bathtub, or, you know, and so she was in a really weird position, but I don't think it was ever, like, re-examined. I think it was just, this was how it was ruled. And now I guess we go backwards a little bit in time, because when I read the book, and it's been a couple of months since I read it, I had not realized that everything wasn't going in chronological order. And so then I went back over it to do these notes. I realized that the story of Patricia Walsh and Marianne Wysocki started in January of 1969. And Tony was arraigned for his child support stuff in March 1969. And so I'm just going to do what the book did and rewind a little bit. So in January 1969, Tony moved into the Standish Street guest house run by Patricia Morton. And he paid her $20 a week in rent in exchange for helping Mrs. Morton with odd jobs around the house. And I don't know if this was in Tony's eventual confession, but on January 24th, Tony went to his garden, and when he got out into the clearing, he saw a hand sticking out of the ground, and like the ground had been disturbed by animals or something. And he freaked out, and he covered it up, and he went back to town. And so he was already shaken. I mean, obviously, like, he put the hand there.
Right.
But I guess, like, he wasn't expecting to go out there and see, like, the hand sticking out of the ground. He probably felt a little haunted, I would imagine. Right. Plus, like, all those teenagers knew that all that stuff was, like, the drugs and stuff were back there. So if they went back there and saw that, like, you know, he probably freaked out about it. When he got back to the guest house, Mrs. Morton introduced him to two women who had just checked in and who were staying there for the weekend. And they were the women from Rhode Island. So their names were Patricia Walsh and Marianne Wysocki. We talked about them at the beginning. Patricia was a second grade teacher, and Marianne was still enrolled at Rhode Island College studying to become a teacher. And Tony they went out that night, and not together with Tony, but Tony happened to be in the same bar that they were in. And because he's a creep, he, like, watched them the whole time that they were there. But he got back to the rooming house before them, and he went into the shared bathroom and found that they had left wet towels on the floor. And you know how he feels about slobs.
Yes.
And so he decided that they owed him a ride to the Royal Coachman the next day to get his paycheck.
Oh.
Because they left wet towels on the floor. And so he went up to their room, and the lady who ran the rooming house had asked them to leave their door open when they left because of, like, the heating in the building to let circulating, you know, she was just like, your stuff will be safe, it'll be totally fine. So of course he went in there and, like, went through their stuff.
Of course.
Because he's a creep. So then he writes them a note on a piece of, like, a brown grocery sack and tacked it to their closet door that asked them for a ride in the morning. And so the next morning, they drove him over there, and he found out that he had been fired since he hadn't bothered to show up for work for a week.
Yeah. You kind of have to go to work.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your job.
On the way back, because he got out there and he found out that he had been fired, but the guy who had his paycheck wasn't there. And so the girls drove him to wherever this guy was. And so he did see Tony with these two women. And this was about noon. And this was the last time that anybody ever saw them alive. The next day, Mrs. Morton found a note tacked to the girls' door on a piece of brown grocery sack that said, "We're checking out early. We had a nice time. Thank you for your kindnesses." And was signed Marianne and Pat. So Bob Turbiddy is Pat's boyfriend. And he started getting worried when he couldn't reach her by phone Sunday night because she told him, "We'll be back Sunday night from our trip because I have to work the next day."
Right.
And so he couldn't get a hold of her. He called her parents, and they hadn't heard from her either. And so Pat's dad called the Massachusetts State Police to find out if anyone had reported any accidents involving a blue Volkswagen Bug with Rhode Island plates. And there hadn't been. And by Tuesday, when they still hadn't heard from Pat, they called the Providence, Rhode Island police to report her missing. But of course, the police were like, she's a grown-up. She can leave if she wants to.
She doesn't have to come home.
Even though they were like, she's a responsible elementary school teacher, and she wouldn't just leave. They were finally allowed to file an official missing persons report, and then the Providence police called the Provincetown police. It's confusing because it's all Province. The patrolman who took the call was, like, sick with the flu, and so he wrote it down, like, on, like, their ledger or whatever it was, and said, okay, we'll look for the girls, we'll look for the car. But then he went home sick.
Yeah.
And so, unless somebody looked at this ledger, nobody even knew to look for the girls or for the car.
He didn't happen to pass the information along.
No. On February 2nd, a man named Carl Benson had his 2 kids in the car and were taking a shortcut through the Pine Grove Cemetery in Truro on an errand to get the morning paper. And he saw a blue Volkswagen Bug parked, like, off of the path in a clearing. So he got out to investigate, and he saw Rhode Island license plates, but he got, like, a hinky feeling, like there was somebody watching him, and then he heard footsteps, and so he got back in the car and he scanned out.
Right.
After he dropped his kids off, he went to the Truro Police Department to report the car. And Chief Harold Barrio, remember the guy who has useless bull tits?
Yes. Yes.
He took the report and then asked Benson if he'd take him out to where he found the car. So the car was there, but now it had a note on the windshield that read, out of gas. And guess what it was written on?
Oh, could it be some brown paper bag?
It sure was. So Benson told him, like, that note was not there.
Yeah.
I walked all the way around this car. That note was not there. Chief Barrio took the license plate down. He went back to the station to check to see if it was reported stolen, which it was not. And the chief was sure it was just someone who ran out of gas and they'd be back. And he went home. Because, you know.
Yeah.
And Provincetown and Truro are only like 4 miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
But they hadn't shared the bolo for the blue Volkswagen Beetle with the Rhode Island plates or the missing women. And so when Sergeant Perry from Providence, Rhode Island, hadn't heard anything from Provincetown, he called the state police and he talked to Detective George Killen. So Detective Killen followed up with Chief Marshall in Provincetown, who said he'd follow up on the report. So it's like all this big mess. Mm-hmm. And the state police detective, Lieutenant William Broderick, was given the job to look for the car in Boston. I don't know why in Boston, but he's told.
Right.
Like, I guess because that's where the police, like the state police barracks were.
Yeah.
But, so he grabs a 6-pack of beer.
Okay.
And then goes driving around looking for the car.
Yeah.
Which he found in Boston.
Why not?
It was parked in front of 415 Beacon Street. Guess who lived there?
I don't know.
Vinny, Tony's brother. So Vinny told him it was his brother's car and that he had parked it there, but he hadn't seen Tony in a few days. So the next day, what was the guy's name? I've lost it. Broderick. He saw a man take the car and drive it to a gay bar. And he followed him in and, like, sat a few stools away from him. But the guy wasn't doing anything but sitting there, like, drinking. And he followed him back home and then, like, later in the day followed him back to the gay bar or something. That was it. He never approached him. Yeah. And so the next day the car and the driver were gone. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that, like, while he's looking for the car, he was only told, hey, look for this car. Yeah. It wasn't, hey, look for this car because there's 2 missing women. Right. And so he was just like, okay, well, I found this car.
Did it.
I did the thing. And so the fact that he found the car was never reported to Providence or Provincetown. You know, if Al Gore had just invented the internet a little bit sooner, this may not have been a problem. So, finally, after Pat's boyfriend Bob Turbiddy did his own investigating and found out that the women had stayed at this rooming house, Sergeant Jimmy Meads headed over to talk to Mrs. Morton, who told them about the note from Tony asking for a ride to the motel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, man, this guy just keeps causing trouble in this town. Like, he has his domestic issues. He possibly broke into the doctor's office. He sells drugs. And now he's connected to these missing women. So he instructs Patrolman James Cook to drive out on the highway to see if the car is broken down. And Cook runs into Chief Barrio. And because remember, they're like 5 miles apart.
Uh-huh.
And they get to talking, and Barrio's like, I know where that car is. And so they drive out to the cemetery, but of course it's gone because it's in Boston, or it was in Boston. And so they started walking around in like the area where the car had been, and they found Patricia Walsh's insurance and registration papers like torn up and laying around the ground because Tony's the worst serial killer ever. And now the police are on the right track. And this is kind of where the story started. Because after this, then they start looking in the woods for, you know, evidence that there may be bodies there. And they're just like, you know, people don't just tear up their registration and leave it laying around. Yeah. So the police remember. Anyway, the body that they found was not Marianne or Patricia's. Mm-hmm. So they head to town to the rooming house to check out Tony's room. And he had moved out earlier in the week, and he had taken his key with him. And I guess in the meantime, Cecilia, Tony's mother, had called Mrs. Morton asking for Tony's hairdryer back.
Okay.
And Mrs. Morton was like, he can have it back when he gives me back my key.
Right.
And she told the police that she hadn't seen him in a week, even though he had never told her he was moving out. He just moved out. And they found some sweaters, and I guess they took Patricia's boyfriend with them to the rooming house to, like, look for stuff, because they were like, well, you'll be able to tell us, you know. And so he said that the sweaters were Patricia's, and that the hairdryer and a faux alligator case was Marianne's, not Tony's.
Yeah.
He takes their car and their lives and their hairdryer.
And steals their hairdryer.
Shrewd. So Tony packed up and moved to Vermont.
Has no boundaries.
I know. I think it's the hairdryer that really like pushed it over the edge. He moves to Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah. But he finds out that the police are looking for him for information about these missing women. And he calls the police and says, well, they went to Montreal to get abortions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Bob Turbiddy, Pat's boyfriend, was, like, outraged. Because he was like, we have both talked about wanting children. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that she would have done this. And she definitely wouldn't have done this without telling me. And so then Tony calls Jimmy Meads, that police officer. And he says, I'm coming back to Provincetown. And Jimmy Meads is like, why? And he said, I have their car. And he's like, okay.
Alrighty. Come on back.
Well, instead of driving the car back, he leaves the car at a gas station in Burlington. And then he takes the bus back to Provincetown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And since he's smarter than everyone, he knows that his story is going to get him cleared with the police. So he tells them that the girls needed money for the abortion. Mm-hmm. And so he bought the car for $900. But that they needed the car to go to Montreal to get the abortion. And so he let them keep the car. Oh. And then they were going to bring it back to him. And the cops were like, why would you think they would bring it back? Like, you don't know these people. Uh-huh. And then he said that he actually didn't pay them. He told them that he was going to pay them the next day. And also that he had actually met them like months before or years before or something. And that he sold them drugs, but that they never paid him for the drugs. And that he was going to take the car as payments. but that he still let them keep the car to go to Montreal to get the abortion.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, if they already stiffed you for drugs, why would you let them keep the car? Why would you think they would bring it back? And then he said, well, they owed him $700 for the drugs, but the car was worth $1,000. So he gave them $300 for the car, and then he got the money from his brother.
Okay.
And then he just was like, are you accusing me of killing them? And they were like, who said they're dead?
Right.
And so he's like, I'm leaving, because he's not under arrest at this point. And they're like, okay. They were like, listen, once we hear from these women, we'll leave you alone. So if you hear from them, will you tell us? And he was like, oh, we're going to hear from them so soon. So he takes a bus from Boston to Buffalo. And the next day, Cecilia, his mom, gets a telegram addressed to Tony from Patricia and Marianne.
Oh, okay.
And so Tony calls her and is like, take it straight to the police station. And then the police are like, oh, for sure he did this.
This is not sus at all.
Because they said that, like, when they were like, if we hear from them, we'll leave you alone. And he was like, we'll hear from them soon. It was like they could see, like, a little light bulb flick on, like, ooh, I know what to do.
We're totally going to hear from them.
Guaranteed. Like, we're going to hear from them. I can feel it. Yeah. So, in March, they found the bodies of Marianne and Patricia in 2 separate holes in the woods. And it had been really cold because, remember, they died in January, and now it's March, and it's Cape Cod, so it's probably freaking freezing. Because, remember, this is the place where the ocean freezes, right? Isn't this the place where you see the videos where, like, the ice, like, the waves are, like, slushy?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I know what you're talking about, but I couldn't tell you where.
Yeah,
it is.
I feel like it's here. Because it had been so cold, they weren't as decomposed as the other body that they had found. And they had also been dismembered. Mary Ann's autopsy revealed a broken nose, a bullet wound to the back of her head, and a second bullet wound behind her left ear. So it's believed that, like, she maybe had been running away, and he had shot her while she was running, and then she had been shot again at close range. The skin on her chest had been cut open, like the other body, and she had 5 deep stab wounds to her chest and a puncture wound under her left shoulder blade and a stab wound to her liver. And disturbingly, did I say that right the first time?
I think so.
He had cut out skin around her pelvis to look like underwear.
Cute.
Yeah. Patricia had bruising on her face and a gunshot wound to the back of her neck. Her chest was also cut open, a broken rib, 3 deep stab wounds to her chest. She was also stabbed in her back, and a major artery near her heart had been severed. Her liver was also stabbed, and there were, like, a bunch of slices along the backs of her legs and her buttocks. They also both showed signs of necrophilia.
Yum.
There was also semen found inside one of the girls. But it's 1969, so there's not DNA yet. I mean, there's DNA. Just no way.
There's no such thing as DNA.
DNA has not been invented yet. And then, remember I told you these girls weren't very decomposed, but when they pulled them out, there was a stinky stink. And so that was because there was another body underneath Patricia.
Cool.
Yeah. This body had been there so long that the remains were blackened. She also had been dismembered, but weirdly, she had, like, been reassembled and, like, laid out. Yeah.
Cool.
Under her body, they found a pair of sandals, a blood-stained shirt, a pair of bell-bottoms that had a $10 bill in the pocket. This body and the first body they found were identified as Sydney Monson and Susan Perry. The police went to Vinny's apartment in Boston looking for Tony. Tony is an idiot. He answered the door, and they were like, what is your name? And he was like, I'm Vinny. And they were like, no, you're not. And they arrested him.
Obviously.
I'm totally Vinny. So Tony tried to implicate a man named Chuck Hansen, who doesn't seem to have existed, and an old friend, Corey Devereaux. Now, Corey Devereaux is the kid from the beginning of the story who had been assaulted by the priest. His lawyers, not Corey's lawyers, but Tony's lawyers tried to get him declared insane, but he was not insane, so it's hard to declare someone insane when they're not. He was crazy, just not the right kind of crazy.
Right.
So during some polygraphs before his trial, when he was implicating these men, Charles Zimmerman, who was kind of like a renowned polygraph examiner person, realized that the stories about how the women died that Tony was telling were true stories, but he was just like, but Tony was the person who did these things. Like, he's like trying to like project it onto these people, but it was something he did.
Right.
Finally, on October 26th, Tony admitted to killing the women, but he told them, quote, "The fact is, I do remember committing these murders. Why? I don't know. I'd like to have someone study it." Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why these polygraph examinations were being done was that his defense attorney had hired them as like this ploy to try to get him declared insane, or that he didn't know what he was doing or whatever. And so because it was paid for by the defense, because of attorney-client privilege, he didn't have to share his confession with the prosecution, and so he ended up going to trial. And they were trying to get the case thrown out now because there was no physical evidence tying him to the crime, because remember, DNA didn't exist then.
Right.
We just magically started having it in the 80s. Avis testified in the trial on Tony's behalf.
Okay.
But she's like, I mean, if you see a picture, hold on. There's a picture of her in this book from the time when she testified. So she's just this like hippie chick, and she does a lot of drugs, and she's still really young.
Yeah.
So she brings in like flowers that she had picked, and she's holding them the whole time, and she keeps giggling on the stand, and then she keeps like covering her mouth while she's giggling, and the judge is like, "Please stop it because we can't hear you." And it was just like a very bizarre kind of a testimony thing. I lost my place because that was crazy. So anyway, Tony is also the smartest person in the room. And so he wanted to take the stand, and his defense was like, "No, because you're going to say something stupid."
Yeah.
But it was a death penalty case, and they knew that in a death penalty case that they let the defendant make a statement if they want to. And so Tony read a statement, and he rambled on for like 10 minutes. But he was calm, and he was articulate, like the opposite of an insane person. And so the defense is just like, we knew he was going to screw this up. And the prosecution is excited because they're like, he screwed this up.
Yeah.
Because he's not,
of course,
he's not insane. And he was so sure he was going to be acquitted. But 6 hours of deliberation, the jury came back. They had found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and recommended a life sentence as opposed to the death penalty, because they only charged him for Marianne and Patricia's death because they knew that they could tie him to those 2 deaths better than the other 2. And they were like, I mean, if he goes to prison or he gets put to death, I mean, he can't be tried again.
Right.
Like, so he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and he was remanded to Walpole. In prison, Tony wrote a factual novel, a la In Cold Blood, titled Resurrection, where he blames fictitious people named Eddie and Carl for the murders. In it, he claims that Susan had died of an overdose, and that he and Eddie decided to dismember her, and that his mother walked in and cursed him and told him to get rid of the mess and clean it up and hope for the best. And people believe that it's possible that this is true. I mean, without Eddie.
Right.
that Cecilia had actually walked in on what was happening, and the whole time she knew more than she let on. However, she died of a brain aneurysm during the trial. So, Susan had been cut into more pieces, which might mean that it had been easier to transport her, and they don't think that she had been killed in the woods. And Cecilia was also been quoted as saying, quote, "If our Tony cut up those girls, he must have had a good reason."
Yeah. Because there's a single good reason to dismember somebody.
I just can't imagine, like, trying to excuse this at all. I mean, like, if it was, like, one girl and it was some kind of, like, freak accident, you might be like, something happened. Like, I don't want to believe that my kid did this. But this is a whole other level. So May 12th, 1974 at 8 p.m., Tony was found hanging in his cell by a leather belt. He was 29 years old. Just 29 years old.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
It's a lot of life.
A lot of life. There was a lot of life that happened in, like, those, like, 5 years.
Yeah.
He is now buried in an unmarked grave in St. Peter the Apostle Cemetery in Provincetown. And that is the story of Tony Chop Chop Costa, the Cape Cod Vampire. I'm not sure about the vampire part.
Yeah,
Definitely the Chop Chop part, though.
Yeah, I don't really know where they got vampire from.
I don't either. And he was also called the Cape Cod Cannibal. But I don't know where that came from either. I don't remember I guess there was the one body that had, like, the buttocks removed. Mm-hmm. And then I can't remember. There was one other girl, and I didn't write it down, that one of their organs was removed, but they also said that could have happened during decomposition.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they're, like, trying to imply that he ate them.
I don't know.
But there was nothing else that I read that would say that he did. So I don't think cannibal is the right word for him.
No.
But
I feel like I paid pretty good attention to this story, but I'm still not understanding why the book is called The Babysitter.
Okay, so I actually was going to tell you that. So,
because that didn't really seem to have anything to do with the babysitter.
Yeah, so poor Liza. Okay? So Liza's one of the little girls that would ride around with them, right? So,
and, like, I assumed it might have something to do with that, but, like, it just seemed like, I don't know, like, the wrong name for the book.
It was. So half of the book is Liza telling, like, her life at this time. Mm-hmm. And her mother was, like, this wild child, like, got divorced from her husband and just wanted to be, like, a wild woman. And she drank a lot, and she, you know, just, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say, like, the epitome of, like, a 60s wild child, like, girl, but I mean, it was kind of like that. Like, she had her beehive, and she drove her convertible, and she'd get dressed up, and she'd go out with her friends, and she'd drink a lot or whatever. But she also had these two little girls.
Yeah.
And she seemed to be abusive to Liza. Like, she was just mean to her, or she'd slap her across her face or whatever, and the little sister could do no wrong. Yeah. At least from Liza's point of view, this is how this goes. And so Liza's telling the story of, like, this time in their lives, and where her mom was, like, a home ec teacher, and they would spend their summers on the beach while her mom was being the maid, because also her best friend owned the hotel, and so they could go out and they could, you know, I don't know, relive their youths or whatever. They probably were still young, but... And then the other half of the story is what was going on with Tony at the exact same time. Mm-hmm. So Tony was working at the hotel where the mom was working, and the mom would just be like, "Get out of my hair." Yeah. Like, go away, find something to do. And Tony would be there, and he would be like, "Hey, girls, do you want to go get in, you know, want to go on a ride with me or whatever?" And they would be like, "Mom, can we go with them?" And she would be like, "Yes, just stay away from me," you know, kind of thing. And so at the very beginning of the book, she's an adult, and her mom is an adult, but her mom's also, like, has struggled with alcoholism her whole life, and is still kind of mean from what I could tell. And she's telling her mom about this dream, and she's like, "Hey, did anything ever bad happen, you know, with this Tony Costa guy?" And her mom is like, why are you still talking about this guy? And she was like, well, whatever happened to him? Like, he was there, and then, like, all of a sudden, he was never there anymore. And her mom was like, oh, well, he turned out to be a serial killer. And she was like, the babysitter was a serial killer?
Yeah.
Because she just considered him a babysitter because she spent so much time with him in those summers. Like, he took care of her when her mom wouldn't take care of her. And her mom was like, oh, don't be dramatic. He wasn't the babysitter. He was a handyman. And she's like, yeah, but we were all over the place with him alone. And her mom was like, well, he didn't kill you.
Yeah.
And so I guess because there were like a couple of summers where she spent a lot of time with him, she just was like, well, he's the babysitter because he's like taking care of us while mom's working.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just where the title of it came from. But yeah. Her mom's a real treat though.
Yeah, she sounds
well,
like
he didn't kill you.
Like a delightful lady.
So? So anyway.
But did you die?
Right. But anyway, he's pretty grotesque.
Yeah. He's not a very good person.
No, he wasn't. And it was funny because I was like looking at these pictures. I'll have to show you again. Hold on. Where are they? But like this is him with like his baby, like his first baby, and he's just like this clean cut guy, and he's not bad looking.
No.
And then when he gets arrested, here's his mug shots. But like it's like the bottom one, he tried to like look like a hippie or something. But he's really like this guy that's like clean cut and like I don't know. No. It was like he was trying real hard to be a hippie. Yeah. But he was just really a burnout. I don't know. Well, there you go.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maybe someday you'll tell me a story.
We'll see.
We'll see.
It could go either way.
It really could. Well, now I've got some work to do.
Yeah. It's past my bedtime.
Yep. All right. Well, remember that you can find us on social media at Twisted and Mysterious, or you can email us at twistedandmysteriousPodcast@gmail.com.
Which we will always encourage you to do.
We will always encourage you to do. If you got a minute, like and subscribe and review and do those kinds of things, and tell us how we're doing. But only if you like what we're doing.
Yeah. Don't tell us if you don't like it.
Don't tell us if you don't like what we're doing. And
we'll get our feelings hurt.
Real easy. Super easy, actually. And I guess that's all.
I think that's all. So, until next time, remember that people are gross and don't get murdered.
Yeah, don't get babysat by a serial killer. No. All right, bye.
Bye.